questions from media here present in New York. After that, we will pass the questions on to journalists who are on the phone line, and that will be a wrap. Rapidement, une description de comment on va procéder ce soir. Tout d'abord, le ministre fera une courte déclaration, après quoi on prendra des questions des médias qui sont ici présents avec nous à New York, et par la suite, on passera aux questions des journalistes qui sont sur la ligne téléphonique. Je rappelle aux journalistes qu'ils ont une question suivie d'une question supplémentaire. I just remind journalists that they have a question and a follow-up. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Minister.
Merci, mesdames et messieurs. Bonsoir et merci d'être avec nous. Aujourd'hui, le Canada a conclu sa campagne en vue d'obtenir un siège au sein du Conseil de sécurité des Nations unies. Le résultat n'est pas celui que nous avions espéré, mais nous sommes fiers de la campagne que nous avons menée au cours des 4 dernières années. Je tiens à remercier tous les pays qui ont appuyé la candidature du Canada. Par la même occasion, je veux féliciter nos concurrents, la Norvège et l'Irlande, ainsi que le Mexique et l'Inde, pour leur élection au sein du Conseil de sécurité des Nations unies. Pour le Canada, cette campagne nous a permis de renouveler et de resserrer plusieurs de nos relations bilatérales. Au cours des 4 dernières années, nous avons établi d'innombrables contacts et renforcé des amitiés à travers le monde. Nous avons réuni, nous avons écouté et nous avons appris de chacun des pays à travers le monde avec qui nous avons eu des contacts. Nous avons noué aussi de nouvelles alliances qui ont ouvert de nouvelles avenues de coopération afin de relever des défis mondiaux et d'accroître la place du Canada dans le monde. Grâce à cette campagne, notre pays est aujourd'hui plus présent que jamais à travers le monde. Comme le premier ministre Trudeau l'a déclaré à maintes reprises, l'obtention d'un siège au sein du Conseil de sécurité des Nations unies n'a jamais été une fin en soi, mais plutôt un moyen d'atteindre nos objectifs. Le Canada, bien évidemment, continuera à jouer un rôle de chef de file et continuera à défendre et promouvoir nos valeurs et principes sur toutes les tribunes. Nous continuerons à travailler avec la communauté internationale afin d'accroître la coopération mondiale et bâtir un monde plus pacifique et plus inclusif. Un monde qui préconise une paix durable, lutte contre les répercussions des changements climatiques, favorise la sécurité économique, fait avancer l'égalité des sexes et renforce, bien évidemment, le multilatéralisme. En conclusion, j'aimerais adresser des remerciements tout particuliers à l'ensemble du corps diplomatique canadien, autant à Ottawa qu'aux 4 coins du monde. Je tiens également à remercier notre premier ministre, Justin Trudeau, pour son leadership et son soutien tout au long de la campagne. Enfin, je veux remercier le diplomate sans qui cette incroyable campagne n'aurait jamais été possible, notre ambassadeur auprès des Nations unies, M. Marc-André Blanchard. Cher Marc-André, il ne fait aucun doute que ton engagement infatigable, ta personnalité et ton dévouement à l'égard de cette campagne serviront de modèle à des générations de futurs diplomates. Je crois pouvoir parler au nom de tous les Canadiens et les Canadiennes en disant que toi, l'ambassadrice adjointe Blais et toute l'équipe avez accompli un travail formidable. Merci, mesdames et messieurs. So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and thank you for being with us here today. Today, Canada concluded its campaign for a seat on the UN Security Council. The result may not be the one we had hoped for, but we are proud of the campaign we conducted over the last 4 years. I want to thank all of the countries who supported Canada in its bid to the Security Council. I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate our 2 competitors, Norway and Ireland, for their election to the Security Council of the United Nations. I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate Mexico and India for their election to the Security Council. For Canada, this campaign allowed us to renew and strengthen many of our bilateral relationships. Over the last 4 years, we made countless connections at all levels and cemented friendships that will last for years to come. We convened, we listened, and we learned from other countries around the world. We forged new alliances, which opened new doors for cooperation to address global challenges and further increase Canada's place in the world. As Prime Minister Trudeau said on many occasions, a seat on the Security Council was never an end in itself. It was merely a means to an end. Canada will continue to play a leadership role and continue to defend and promote our values and our principles around the world. We will continue to work with the international community to advance global cooperation and build a more peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable world. A world that furthers sustainable peace, addresses the impacts of climate change, promotes economic security, advances gender equality, and strengthens multilateralism. In closing, I would like to extend a special thanks to all of Canada's diplomatic corps, both at Global Affairs in Ottawa and across the globe. I also want to thank our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, for his leadership and support throughout this campaign. And finally, I want to thank the diplomat without whom this campaign would never have been possible, our ambassador to the UN, Mr. Marc-André Blanchard. Marc-André, your unrelenting engagement, your personality and dedication to this campaign will no doubt serve as a model for generations of future diplomats. I think I speak on behalf of all Canadians when I say that you and Deputy Ambassador Blais and your entire team have gone above and beyond the call of duty. And tonight, every Canadian should be grateful for the work you did. I'll be happy to take your questions now.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre. Nous allons passer donc immédiatement aux questions des journalistes sur l'appel téléphonique. We will immediately go to questions of journalists on the phone. Operator, over to you.
Thank you. Please press star 1 at this time. If you have a question, n'hésitez pas à appuyer sur étoile 1 pour toute question. First question, la première question nous vient de Mélanie Marquis de la Presse canadienne. À vous la parole. Please go ahead. Bonjour, Monsieur Champagne.
Bonjour, Madame Marquis.
Bonjour. Qu'est-ce qui étonne? Pourquoi le Canada n'a-t-il pas été élu pour ce siège?
Écoutez, d'abord, je pense que ce soir, c'est l'occasion de remercier les femmes et les hommes qui ont travaillé d'arrache-pied au cours des 4 dernières années, qui ont fait la promotion du Canada à travers le monde. Il y aura beaucoup de temps pour poser ces questions-là, pour y répondre, pour réfléchir sur les leçons qu'on a apprises durant cette campagne-là. Mais ce soir, je voudrais vraiment prendre le temps de remercier ces hommes et ces femmes qui ont dédié près de 4 ans de leur vie à faire la promotion du Canada. Et je pense que comme Canadiens et Canadiennes, on doit être fiers de leur travail.
Mais, donc, j'ai une question suivie. Votre réaction, M. Champagne, à cette défaite, quelle est-elle? Puis, ça veut dire quoi pour le gouvernement qui a tellement misé sur le retour du Canada sur la scène internationale? Et un grand pan de ça, c'était de revenir aux Nations Unies avec un siège.
Ben, je vous dirais que le Canada va continuer à être engagé. Le Canada, c'est un grand pays. On est membre du G7, du G20, de la francophonie, du Commonwealth, de l'OTAN, de l'Organisation des États de l'Amérique. Écoutez, on va continuer de faire valoir nos principes, nos valeurs. On va continuer de s'engager sur les changements climatiques. On va continuer de faire la promotion de l'égalité des sexes, la sécurité économique. Il y a beaucoup d'enjeux où le Canada peut continuer de faire la différence et va continuer de faire la différence. Évidemment, on l'a toujours dit, un siège au sein du Conseil de sécurité, ce n'était pas une fin en soi, c'était une tribune additionnelle pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes de faire entendre leur voix. Mais moi, l'engagement que j'ai pris quand j'ai parlé aux différents ministres des Affaires étrangères, et c'est la même chose avec le premier ministre, c'était d'amplifier la voix de ces pays-là, que ce soit dans les Caraïbes, que ce soit dans les îles du Pacifique, que ce soit en Afrique, que ce soit au Moyen-Orient. Et cette voix-là, on va continuer de la faire valoir sur la base des principes et des valeurs qui sont chers aux Canadiens et aux Canadiennes.
Thank you, merci. The next question is from Glenn McGregor from City News. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Minister Champagne, thank you for taking questions. Could you explain why you think you lost? Where did the support not come from that you were counting?
Like I said, there'll be ample time to reflect and think about the lessons learned. Tonight, I wanted to put the focus on the men and women who have dedicated more than 4 years of their lives to promote Canada and to raise the voice of Canada in all the various forums that we can. But with respect to the analysis at what may have happened and lessons learned, I may ask Ambassador Blanchard to give you more of the feedback on that. But rest assured, and Canadians who are watching us will continue in our engagement across the world. I think that Canada is ever more present now. Our influence is greater. We have reconnected with countries around the world. I think the Prime Minister probably contacted more than 50 world leaders in the last few weeks. I certainly talked to probably 130 of them. The missions around the world have been engaged. This was Team Canada. This was not a Prime Minister or a Foreign Minister or an Ambassador. This was Canada. And we will continue to promote Canada in all these forums. But more specifically to your question, I'll ask Ambassador Blanchard to give you a bit more color. Ambassador?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. At the UN, the race for the Security Council in the Western European and others group that we belong to, the regional group that we belong to, is always very, very competitive. The races are tight, and this year was no difference. And then when you have a race like the one we were in, with three great countries that have a lot to bring to the world and to the UN, it's a difficult choice for the countries and the member states. And each country has 193 different reasons why they would support one country or another. And this is this is the politics of the UN that is very tricky and very difficult and complex. And we will have plenty of time to actually look at that in the near future and analyze this. But the role of Canada at the UN has been, the engagement of Canada at the UN has been enhanced so much over the last few years in this campaign. And this is, Canada is really a leader in so many fronts: food security, climate change, economic security, women and girls, all the issues that are so relevant in the world today. Look at the situation of COVID-19. So that will bring also the role of Canada tomorrow morning at the UN. I will go back to the UN and be as enthusiastic and as passionate about the role of Canada and the role of the UN in the world. We need the UN more than ever in the world. We need Canada within the UN also to remain a very important player, because a lot needs to be done, and Canada can make a significant difference on many of those topics.
Just as a follow-up, Ambassador, do you think those messages, the emphasis in the Canadian campaign on climate change and on women and girls and gender equality, didn't resonate with the countries that you needed support from, particularly developing countries, where things like peacekeeping and, crucially, foreign aid, the percentage of GDP that we contribute to foreign aid is below Norway's. Do you think those were maybe factors that we just gave the wrong message in this campaign?
Well, let me just take, whether you talk about climate change or whether you talk about gender equality, I can assure you, Glenn, that to all the foreign ministers I've talked to around the world, those are things that matter. We know that climate change is the next big looming crisis. We know that gender equality is something that is long due, that we need to promote. Those things will continue to be cornerstone of our foreign policy. And I can tell you that these topics that we put forward, whether it's about economic security, multilateralism, they will remain pillars of our foreign policy. This wasn't an end. This was only another place, another tribune for us to be speaking loud, and we will continue to do that. But I'll let Ambassador Blanchard to give you a bit of color with respect to the discussions here at the UN on that. Ambassador?
Well, as I said before, for example, on the role of financing, Canada is perceived as a world leader on financing, on innovative financing. And we had, a few weeks ago, the Canadian Prime Minister, who convened with the Secretary General and the Prime Minister of Jamaica, 51 heads of states who came. This was the biggest event in the UN, convening so many heads of states outside of the annual General Assembly, and on a topic that is actually at the core of what is needed now in the world, which is thinking about the financing post-COVID. So I would say that the issues that Canada has put on the table have resonated to a certain extent. Yes, we didn't get the result that we were looking for. On the other hand, that doesn't mean that the agenda has been dismissed or rejected. Quite the contrary. I think there was a lot of engagement. And as I said, you have 193 voters, 193 countries that vote. Each of the countries have a different reason to support one country or another. And I also want to underline the fact that this is, some editors have been written all over the world on this race, saying that this is the toughest competition at the United Nations, and this election here was perceived by everyone as very, very competitive and very tough, and Canada was very competitive. But we were also against two countries that have their strengths and had also something to offer. And but I just want to say that the agenda that we were running on is really relevant and has resonated, and is the one that we should continue to put forward, because we all need to work better together as a world on these issues.
Thank you, merci. The next question is from Christian Noël de Radio-Canada. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Bonjour, c'est une question pour M. Blanchard et pour M. Champagne aussi. Le Canada a mis les gros. On a fait moins bien que M. Harper, qui, lui, n'avait pas fait campagne. Comment est-ce que vous prenez cette défaite?
Ben, je vous dirais qu'évidemment, ce n'est pas le résultat qu'on aurait souhaité. On savait qu'au départ, il n'y avait pas de garantie de victoire. Je pense que l'ambassadeur Blanchard en a parlé. C'est une des courses les plus compétitives. Mais ça valait l'effort. Je pense que les Canadiens et les Canadiennes qui nous écoutent s'attendaient à ce qu'on mette l'effort pour y arriver, s'attendaient à ce qu'on investisse le temps et l'effort pour avoir une autre tribune. Mais je veux dire aux Canadiens et aux Canadiennes qui nous écoutent ce soir que le Canada est déjà sur plusieurs tribunes, que ce soit le G7, le G20, la francophonie, le Commonwealth. Alors, la position du Canada, la politique étrangère du Canada, bien, on va continuer de la faire valoir sur toutes ces tribunes-là. L'ambassadeur Blanchard le disait, on préside, par exemple, la Commission de la reconstruction ici à l'ONU. Donc, tout le système onusien, on va continuer de s'impliquer. Nous, on veut un ONU qui fonctionne. On avait des propositions concrètes de réforme pour le système des Nations unies. On offrait évidemment une plateforme qui tenait en compte, je pense, les grands enjeux de ce jour-là, certainement lorsqu'on est en pleine crise de COVID, comment on se prépare pour la prochaine crise, qu'est-ce qu'on fait pour les changements climatiques, comment on peut faire valoir évidemment l'égalité des genres, réformer le multilatéralisme, parler de la sécurité économique. Écoutez, durant cette crise-là, s'il y a une chose que j'ai entendue des ministres des Affaires étrangères à travers le monde, on parlait de la sécurité alimentaire, on parlait de la sécurité économique, on parlait de la sécurité des chaînes d'approvisionnement. Alors, les enjeux que le Canada a amenés, l'influence que le Canada a développée en s'engageant envers le monde durant particulièrement les derniers mois, mais aussi les dernières années, tout ça, ça reste. Ça, c'est de l'acquis. Ce sera maintenant à nous, évidemment, de continuer sur toutes ces tribunes-là, de faire valoir la position du Canada.
M. Blanchard.
M. Blanchard dit qu'il est satisfait avec cette réponse-là.
D'accord. Bien, dans ce cas-là, en question de relance, beaucoup de gens ont dit de la candidature du Canada au niveau international que, dans le fond, on avait des grands principes, mais qu'on ne mettait pas l'argent et les bottes sur le terrain où il fallait. En gros, que le Canada était un grand parleur et un petit faiseur. Est-ce que le résultat d'aujourd'hui, ce n'est pas une confirmation de ça?
Moi, ce que je peux vous dire, et c'est une question qui me revient souvent, Ce que les gens me parlent, c'est de l'impact du Canada dans le monde. Je peux vous parler, par exemple, de la mission de MINUSMA où je suis allé au Mali avec le premier ministre. Ce que les gens nous faisaient état, c'était évidemment la contribution unique du Canada. Par exemple, lorsqu'on a lancé l'initiative LC avec plus de femmes dans les contingents de police ou militaires, ce que le chef, le commandant de la force de police de l'ONU me disait là-bas, il me dit, Monsieur Champagne, vous êtes en train de non seulement réformer la façon de faire de la police communautaire, mais vous êtes en train de transformer les Nations unies de la façon que vous faites. Alors, ce que je vous demande, c'est de garder ce contingent-là. Moi, c'est ça que j'entends, évidemment, de nos partenaires, et je vous ferai remarquer que récemment, quand l'ONU nous a demandé de déployer 2 appareils pour aider à transporter du matériel médical essentiel, bien, le Canada a répondu présent. C'est ça le Canada dans le monde. Notre engagement vers l'Afrique, je peux vous assurer, va continuer. On est allé visiter l'Afrique, le premier ministre et moi, à plusieurs reprises déjà. L'engagement vers les Caraïbes va continuer. L'engagement vers, évidemment, l'Amérique du Sud, les pays qui sont au Moyen-Orient, nos partenaires européens, tout cet engagement-là va continuer. Et je pense que la voix du Canada résonne aujourd'hui plus parce que ça nous a permis de rebâtir ces alliances-là, de découvrir de nouvelles alliances. Et c'est ça sur lequel on va se focaliser dans les prochains mois, dans les prochaines années.
Thank you, merci. The next question is from Michelle Carvert from the Global Mail. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Minister. Will your government continue to tout that Canada is back on the world stage?
Well, I would say it's a matter of fact. The fact that we have engaged with the world, I can assure you, like I said, the Prime Minister probably talked to more than 50 world leaders in the last few weeks. I certainly engaged with about 130 of the foreign minister. It allowed us to listen, to engage, to look forward, because like I said, we knew there was no guarantee of victory, but it was worth the effort. We knew this was not an end in itself. It was a mean. It was another venue. It was another platform to raise this issue, but I can assure you we will continue, whether it's the G7, the G20, our engagement with Venezuela, our engagement in Libya. Countries have asked us to be more engaged than ever during these conversations. It would have been nice to be able to add our voice, amplify their voice through the UN Security Council. We will continue to be as engaged as ever in the UN system. We chair the Peace Building Commission. We are engaged in many fronts, so that engagement will continue. This was one other place for us to make our voice heard, but rest assured that the voice of Canada will be heard. We will stand by our values and principles as we've done throughout this campaign.
And what do you think Lester B. Pearson would have to say about Canada losing twice in a row in its bid for a Security Council seat?
I read about him yesterday, actually. And I read about his famous quotes. And I think if Lester B. Pearson was with us today, he would say, keep on going. The voice of Canada matters more than ever. The values and principles that Canada has put forward resonates around the world. The concept of peace, order, and good government is more needed than ever in this world. So I think if Lester B. Pearson was with us today, would say, keep on going, Canada.
Thank you, merci. The next question is from Ryan Tunossi from the National Post. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, Minister. I'm wondering if you think this loss speaks to Canada's foreign policy in a bigger way, that perhaps we don't have the support of our allies, perhaps they're concerned about our weapon sales to Saudi Arabia, or our failure to condemn human rights violations in certain countries. Do you think we have a broader problem with our image?
Well, like I said, today is the day to thank the men and women who have invested so much time and effort to put the case forward for Canada over the last 4 years. There'll be ample time for us to reflect on that. I'll certainly do part of the reflection. We will engage. We will continue. But, as the ambassador said before, some of the things that we have promoted, gender equality. I mean, obviously, Canada will continue to push for gender equality around the world. Multilateralism, I think everyone would agree back home that we need to be more engaged than ever. Multilateralism is part of the DNA of Canadians. When you think about climate change, I don't think anyone would question that the next big looming crisis is climate change. Whether we talk about economic security, well, obviously, as we're going to COVID, this is going to be front and center. And when you think about peace and security, we've said many times, we need to be careful that what started as a health crisis doesn't turn into a financial or a food crisis, which would bring us to humanitarian crisis. So obviously the Security Council, which is obviously the body to discuss about peace and security, it would have been nice to add Canada's voice to that. But rest assured that we will continue to push, because the pillars of our foreign policy, the pillars of our campaign still resonates around the world, and we'll continue to put them forward in all venues that we can.
And just as a follow-up, the vote came very close to moving on to a second ballot. I'm wondering, either you or maybe the ambassador can answer, do you suspect we would have had more support on a second ballot and maybe would have been able to garner a seat if we could have gotten it that far?
Well, what I'll tell you, and I'll see if maybe Deputy Ambassador Blair wants to comment on that, but, we were ready for all scenarios. The Ambassador Blanchard said it. This is probably one of the most challenging races you can imagine. Everyone would recognize in the UN system that the grouping we're part of is very challenging, and we will reflect on that. There's some lessons learned, obviously. We saw the results. But I think with respect to what Canadians would have expected from their leaders and from their team on the ground is to be ready for all scenarios. If we had gone into a second round, we were prepared. The result is what it is, but I don't know if Deputy Ambassador, if you want to add a few words to that. Deputy?
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much. And before I continue to respond, I just want to take a moment and say on behalf of the entire team, just pay tribute to the leadership that we have had in this campaign. And I couldn't be more proud to having served under Marc-André Blanchard and with the team led as well by our Minister and our Prime Minister. And our immediate team here in New York and the team in Ottawa and across the world. It's been just an honor for me to serve along your side. And I would just want to say you've all did a tremendous job. And I've seen the dedication that you've put in for Canada tirelessly. And it was an inspiration to me. With regards to the question, I would want to say that as the Minister alluded to, races for the Security Council, particularly in our regional group, are very, very unpredictable. We were talking to colleagues and friends from different countries yesterday. No one was able to call it. It is very, very difficult, and there's a lot of factors that go into it, and dynamics between rounds can change. In this case, we weren't able to see what the second round would have looked like. But I think that in the end, we did as good a job as I think was possible to do, and I'm extremely proud of the work that has been done. And as the Minister has alluded to, I have seen firsthand how this campaign has enabled us to engage with a wide variety of countries with different concerns and preoccupation around the world, and I think Canada is better for it today. And I was really proud to be part of that exercise. I want to thank you, Mr. Minister, for giving me a chance to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. The next question, la prochaine question is from David Lundgren from Reuters. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Yeah, good evening, Minister. I have a couple of questions. You keep talking about the contribution to MINUSMA, but it is no secret that Canada's allies were unhappy by the amount of time it took you to decide what mission you were going to contribute to, the small number of troops you sent compared to the Prime Minister's promises, and the fact you would not extend the mission even when asked. How much do you regret not having done more in Mali?
Well, I would say, David, that's not what I've heard from the UN. I can assure you, I was in the room with them, and I wish you would be there, but I can assure you people welcome Canada. They obviously want more of Canada in missions we can contribute. We contribute, gladly and what we can when we can. But what the member in the room were telling me, and I met with the head of the MINUSMA, I met with the head of the military aspect of MINUSMA, I met with the head of the police. They were thanking Canada for making that contribution because they were talking about impact. None of them have talked to me once about numbers, but they were talking, all of them, about the impact, the difference that we're making on the ground, and how proud they were to see men and women wearing the Canadian flag being part of the mission, telling me stories that women are changing the way the UN is doing, asking us to bring to contribute more women in these contingents because they were seeing the best out of Canada in our troops, and they just wanted us to be there for longer. That's what I've heard from the leadership of MINUSMA, and that's what I've heard throughout, and I can assure I did meet a number of people when I was there, and they were grateful and thankful to the men and women who were ready to serve in that mission.
And secondly, am I right in understanding that despite the result of this vote, you will entertain no fundamental changes in Canadian policy? I mean, I know you won't give details now, but surely people will be reviewing this to figure out what other countries liked and what they didn't like.
I think you know, at a time like that, you have to see the results, and we have to reflect. Obviously, as Canadians and as leaders, we will have to think certain aspects. We will take our time to do that, to review, think about lessons learned, and what could have been done better with respect to that particular campaign. But what I was referring to before is that the pillars that we have put forward, to me, are appealing to the people I've engaged around the world. As Ambassador Blanchard said, then you come down to UN politics, which is a fairly complex set of circumstances. Every country would make their choice based on their interests, based on commitments they may have made. But I don't think I would see that as a rejection of the fundamental pillar that we have put forward around climate change, gender equality, multilateralism, economic security, peace and security. I don't think those fundamental pillars that we've put forward are very relevant today. Could we have done things differently? That's going to be the subject of our reflection. And certainly we will take these results into account in that reflection.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Mike Blanchfield from Canadian Press. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's a question for the minister, I guess. Was it a mistake to run in the first place, given that Norway and Ireland had head starts of many, many, many years? I mean, you said yourself you spent 40 years campaigning, but they've been at it for like close to a decade each. Should Canada have waited?
Mike, I'm afraid we're losing you out. I don't think I could not hear clearly your question. If you would not mind repeating it. I think I get the gist of it, but I'm not sure what was the end of it.
Should Canada have waited campaign, given that Norway and Ireland declared early and were campaigning for many years before Canada?
Well, that's certainly something that we will take as a reflection, you know, as part of the lessons learned. There are many things, I think Ambassador Blanchard said it and Deputy Ambassador Bless said it. There are many things that go into a campaign like that. We've invested a lot of time and effort over the last 4 years. We'll have a chance to reflect what could have led to that results, and certainly the timing of certain action or decision. We will reflect on all that. But I think tonight, what I think Canadians, they should be very grateful to the men and women in our missions around the world, particularly those who have been investing so much time and effort and emotions and passion. This is the best that we have in our civil service. These people have been, you see the faces, I mean, you can see them, but I can see them. The face of people who have devoted 4 years of their life to defend Canada, to promote Canada, to talk about Canada. We should celebrate them tonight. This is their evening.
And what about some people say, including Senator Peter Beam and others who weren't associated with the campaign, that Canada doesn't belong in WEOG, and that maybe should be in a Latin American Caribbean group. After all, Mexico didn't have much of a fight today, did it? So Canada considering moving forward with looking at realigning itself in the UN structure, maybe getting into another group in the future?
Well, I mean, there's no secret, and I think you said it very well, Mike, that this is probably one of the most competitive grouping that you find in the United Nations. I think it's good for Canadians to understand that this was one of the most competitive races. There was no guarantee of victory, but it was worth the effort. That's why we invested the time and effort to do that. To your point, I think Canada is going to be reflecting on the type of reforms we need at the UN to make a UN which is focused on people, efficient, effective, and certainly that's going to be part of our reflection. We need to think about a lot of things over the next few months and the next few years as Canada. But certainly we recognize that this is one of the most competitive grouping, and we should, as Canadians and as a foreign policy and our engagement with the UN, to reflect on where Canada best belongs in terms of these groupings. And certainly we will be engaged. The Ambassador Blanchard said it. He will walk in the UN tomorrow proud of the work that he and his team have achieved. And I will continue as Foreign Minister of Canada to engage with the UN because we believe that the UN is more needed now than ever. Next
Thank
question.
you. Next question is from Amanda Connolly from Global News. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Minister, for taking our questions today. You've been talking a lot about the need to reflect today and going forward here, but it's been decades since Canada's had an actual foreign policy review akin to what your government undertook with the defense policy review. The world has changed a lot since the days of Buster B. Pearson, and I wonder, are you open or considering to a top-to-bottom comprehensive foreign policy review?
I'm certainly open to think about what we need to do best to promote Canada abroad and around the world. Like I said, Canadians should put in perspective that our voice and our standing in the world is strong, whether it's at the G7, the G20, Commonwealth, la Francophonie, NATO. Canada is playing a crucial part in the international system, defending the international rule-based order, having trade agreements with more than countries representing 1.2 billion people in Europe, in Asia, in North America. So we're very much engaged. So yes, to your point, will we be open to considering different things? Yes, and we should as Canadians, because this was Canada who was running. This was not a project of one. This was a project of many and Canada. So we will reflect on how best we can project Canada around the world.
And just to follow up here as well, I wanted to talk a little bit more about China, too. Do you think that China could have lobbied against Canada at all in this for the votes that we were pursuing, particularly in African and Asian countries?
I don't think so. I mean, when you are here in New York and you talk to the various representatives, you put forward what Canada stands for. And certainly, I think the team here has been doing a great work. I don't think it's a time to point finger. It's a time to reflect on the great campaign that the men and women here have been undergoing. And we will have time to reflect on what could have happened and what might have been the factors. But tonight, a few hours after the results, I think the focus is really to thank the men and women who did so much for Canada.
I want to thank everybody. Thank you very much for taking part in this press conference. This concludes the press conference. Merci à tous les participants. Ceci met fin à notre conférence de presse. Bonsoir.
Merci tout le monde. Bonne soirée. Merci.